All right, welcome to our annual Halloween show, Lovecraft eZine Halloween show. This is October the 30th, 2014, and every year I'm lucky enough to have this gentleman, Scott Thomas, author Scott Thomas, with me. Big fan of Halloween, just like I am. And Matthew Carpenter is also joining us this year. And Scott's brother. Sorry?
I gotta say, I always wanted to meet Scott because I love your writing, man. I really do. And you were going to Necronomicon, and so was I. I thought I would meet you there, and I never ran into you, and I was so disappointed. And then I downloaded the digital photos I had taken at the event, and I had taken a shot of Mike Davis across the street walking with some friends to lunch. You were right beside him. I didn't see you were there till I downloaded the photo. It's like, okay, well, that didn't work out quite right.
That was actually when he gave me the Sea of Ash at Necronomicon. I was going to say, as Jeff Thomas will be along. He did the video test with me earlier, so I know he'll be along. So, but he might be, his computer might be slow getting on or something. It happens with Google Hangout. So, welcome to everybody watching. Like to say, of course, a lot of people watch later, but if you're watching the live show right now, which some people are, if you've had a kind of true life ghost story or paranormal experience happen to you, anything you can't explain, there goes Matt. This is something I said. And post it on the message board. And if you don't know where our message board is, I'll keep an eye on that. If you don't know where our message board is, it's on Facebook, which just go to Facebook, and in the Facebook message bar, type in Lovecraft eZine public message board and ask to join, and I'll keep an eye on that, and I will add you into the group. But I think most people watching already know this. All right, we're going to talk about Halloween and everything. Before I do, Scott here is, if you don't know, he's the author of The Sea of Ash, which my new press, Lovecraft eZine Press, just published as our first print book. And you know what? The Sea of Ash it's really got this Halloween autumny feel to it. So if you're a fan of Halloween, definitely get the book. But Scott, I want to read you something. This is an email to me today from author William Holloway. He's the author of several novels, Lovecraftian novels. Mike, this guy is better than Ligotti, period, full stop. He's out Kafkaing Kafka, and he seems to do it without any of the pretentious, nihilistic chick that plagues our genre. My envy is complete. He somehow tapped into the most frightening thing I can imagine. This is about the Sea of Ash, of course, but I doubt I could ever articulate. It's the idea of the dream amorphous seeping into the real with the single goal of inducing that gibbering madness worse than death. So he likes the book, I think. So there's a lot of people there. So Scott, your brother told me, and I think we discussed this a little bit last year. Oh no, I was wondering why he wasn't saying anything.
He was blushing. I think you overpraised him and he fled.
I oversold it. No, I was going to say his brother told me that when he was when they were growing up, they were big fans of Halloween, and Scott had all these rituals that he had to do the day of Halloween, where he'd I don't even want to name them because I'll get them wrong, but I always like to ask him about them. Let's see here. Both of my guests are not showing up. That's weird because Jeff did the video test a little bit ago.
Well, why don't you tell us, I know what you did last year, I believe, with your son. Tell me what you're going to do this year.
Well, we already went to Thrillvania, which is it's kind of a little theme park. It's got several haunted house type places and rides and so forth. About 45 minutes away from here. It's pretty neat. It's got shows, things like that. It's like a little Halloween town, really. So
I remember you said he was tired of trick or treating, even though he's kind of young, and you took him to a graveyard to read spooky stories or something, didn't you?
Yeah, we do that a lot. Yeah. Yeah, he's the only kid I know that likes graveyards, so I must be doing something.
Because what we do, we had our haunted house here is called Spider Hill, and they have a haunted trail, a haunted house, but the best thing is they have a hayride. And you get on this hayride, and there are people dressed up like zombies that attack your cart or your wagon as you go by, but you have paintball guns. And you take pot shots at the zombies. Now, they're not those big professional-grade paintballs. They're the tiny little ones, you know.
Yeah, the big ones.
I guess these guys are dressed up in face masks and football pads and stuff. But they get paintballed to heck and back.
Yeah, you know, a lot of those rides I've heard where, like, they'll plant somebody on the hayride that acts like they're a guest, you know, but then they act like they get killed by a zombie or a monster that comes out of the woods or something.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, it would be. All right, so like I said, if you've got a paranormal experience to share, yeah, Kimberly, I killed him. Post it on the message board and I'll read it. New person on the message board says, I lived in a haunted farmhouse back in 1980. My mother and I almost went on the show That's Incredible to tell the story. She backed out at the last minute because she did not want to go back to the house. Wow.
Maybe she could. Who was this person? Can they tell us more about it?
Yeah, type more about it if you would. Let me check on Scott. That's what happens when you do a live show. Things go wrong. I don't see a message from him.
We've always done neat stuff on Halloween, but I wish I could say I had a paranormal type experience. I just haven't. One of my earliest Halloween memories, I think I was in no more than kindergarten. My dad took me and my two older brothers to the local movie theater, and we saw Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Wolfman, like on Halloween night.
The 30s and 40s ones?
Yeah, the Bela Lugosi one, the Lon Chaney one. You know, they've been favorites ever since. I think that movie Frankenstein is brilliant. It is not only is it gorgeously made, but it's really scary. Little girl.
Yeah, that's a great scene. Yeah, my wife and I had a paranormal experience happen to us, which if you're on the show last year, you probably heard this, but I'll fill up the time while I'm waiting on Scott and Jeff. I hope they show up. If not, it's going to be a bust. We were driving. This has been like 15 years ago. We'd only been married 2 or 3 years. Our anniversary was last month, so we've been married 18 years now, Matt. So my my marriage is now old enough to vote. So so anyway, I think we had gone an hour or two away to somebody else's wedding, and we'd been married 2 or 3 years. So we were driving home in the middle of the night, this 2-lane road, and really, really dark. You know those 2-lane roads, they're not like the interstates. They don't have lights or anything.
No, you're pretty darn dark in the country. Yeah,
it's just your headlights, and that's it. So we're going along. I was driving, and all of a sudden, we see this. The best way I can describe it is this 2-dimensional shadow. Like if you imagine a person's shadow, and the shadow did look like a person, but standing upright and basically looked like a shadow that ran across the road. Maybe, I don't know, 50 feet in front of the car. And it went really quickly from right to left. I mean, really quickly. And I would say that it was something that I came up with, except that my wife said, "Did you see that?" And I asked her what she saw, and she described pretty much the same thing.
Was it a moon shadow? Was there a moon out?
No, it was very dark. I don't remember any moon.
You know, it's hard to think. Were you in Texas at the time?
No, we lived in Iowa. We only moved to Texas like 4 years ago.
That's you think like, what are the large animals on the Great Plains?
Yeah.
And you think like, oh, deer, because most of the other wildlife there, to be honest, is smallish.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
is.
small mammals.
Well, I'm used to animals going across the road, and
Right, so it wouldn't look like, it doesn't sound to me like there are any animals that could explain it. Do you know what I mean? Just knowing because what the wildlife is around here.
Yeah, and you know, I'm kind of skeptical. I don't have the kind of mind where if I can't explain it, that I automatically say, okay, well, it must have been paranormal. But it's truly an unexplained in my mind because I can't imagine what it was. Now, maybe it was just something that I can't think of, some simple explanation that I can't think of, but...
No, I was thinking, like, what about, like, the shadow of an owl up from the moon, you know? But that would be flat on the road. Or it would be just up against a white tree trunk or something. You know what I mean? It wouldn't, like, go through space upright.
Yeah, that's possible, I suppose. Oh, it was I remember it being a moon. And I
Plus,
told
there
him
wasn't any moon.
about this some years ago, and he started on this big thing. He's into this thing he calls the shadow people, which I guess is a thing. These people, or these entities that look like shadows. I don't know what the deal is with them, but he went on and on about it, said a bunch of stuff that I don't remember, but maybe somebody watching knows something about that. Let me... I don't know what the hell happened to Scott, because I did a video test with them both an hour ago. See, David Verse just posted a picture of Bethel Cemetery. All right, here we go. Kim on the message board says, unexplained paranormal experience. I had a case of triple deja vu, which I am convinced was a series of precognitive dreams. I saw a scene some 3 or 4 times before it actually happened. I was looking at that camera and said, is that all you... I'm thinking, is that all you're going to say? The scene was always the same. My mother, sister, and I are driving down this road at night. The conversation somehow turns to Rocky Horror Picture Show. That is horrific. And I look over and see a certain road sign pass by. This kept showing up in my mind. It was to the point where we'd actually be driving on a different road, and I'd ask, hey, isn't there supposed to be a road sign for blank road there? And they'd think I was losing it and say, no, there's no street by that name here. Until it finally happened one day. We're driving down the road, the conversation turned to Rocky Horror. I looked over, and there was the road sign. I flipped the fuck out, exclaimed how I'd been seeing this, and they thought I was full of shit, but I wasn't. And every time I pass that street sign, I can't help but grin to myself.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, you know, I've thought about that too. I've had a few, I can't think of anything specific right now, but deja vu incidents, and I can't really explain them. You know, there's Jeff.
Here I am. Sorry, I'm running late.
No, that's okay. Your brother was on the show, and he said he's got some new computer that's acting up, and so we're waiting for him to come back on.
Oh, wow.
So how are you?
Good, thank you. Just a little hurried.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you this, since Scott's not here.
Yes.
You had told me one time, about a year or so ago, that you guys were both into Halloween when you were growing up, but Scott had this whole list of stuff that he had to do every Halloween.
Yeah, he had these rituals. He would have to like watch this movie. His favorite Halloween movie is probably still John Carpenter's Halloween, and he'd have to like read these stories and go to this cemetery, or you know, all these different rituals, and get to the point where it was so overwhelming that it was kind of takes the fun out of it, because then you're putting so much expectation on it and stressing yourself out with your schedule that you just can't enjoy it spontaneously, you know.
Well, Scott's a little bit of a perfectionist, right?
Yeah. He probably still does it that way, but I think he's probably toned it down a little bit, and I have too. I now I just kind of go with the flow. especially with kids. You know, it's more towards them anyways. You know.
Yeah, that's true. You guys have a couple of other brothers, don't you, or at least one other?
We have one other brother, Craig. He's the youngest brother, and we have an older sister, Wendy.
Oh, okay.
Is Craig a writer?
He's written some poetry that I published in a small press magazine that I did in the '90s. But no, he's not like Scott and I. Hasn't gone that route.
Is that good or bad? He's not like Scott.
It's probably wise.
So the Sea of Ash is doing really well.
Mm.
You got your copy, didn't you?
It's beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful.
For those watching that don't know, Jeff is the author of Punktown and quite a few others. What's a couple of others, Jeff?
Probably my favorite novel that I've written is Letters from Hades. And that's not a Punktown thing. I've written a series of short stories and novels rather, set in my interpretation of the netherworld.
Mm-hmm.
And Hades was the first, and I think the best of them. And so that's probably my favorite novel. I also did a Nightmare on Elm Street tie-in back in 2006. An original Nightmare on Elm Street novel. A publisher approached me and asked me if I'd be willing to try my hand at writing an original novel in one of the New Line Cinema franchises, you know, either Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th, Final Destination, something like that.
Right.
So I pitched them an idea for it was actually one of those Jason X. Jason X was that Friday the 13th movie that was in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And they were doing a series of novels based on that concept. So I pitched them a novel, a Jason X novel, and they liked it, but they were going to hold off. They had a lot of them already lined up. They wanted to see how they were going to do first. So they said, until we see whether or not we want to go with this one, what else can you come up with? So I came up with an original Nightmare on Elm Street plot, and they gave the green light to that one, and I wrote that one.
Oh, how did that do?
It did well. You know, I mean, it was my first mass market novel. It was the first novel that I saw, you know, around in like Barnes and Noble and everything. So it was fun.
Yeah,
the Gypsy thing that never came through because they shortly thereafter they discontinued that line of New Line Cinema novels.
Yeah, I'd like to say that one thing that Jeff wrote recently is a little novella called Subject 11.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually a brilliant little book.
Thank you. It's one of my top favorite things that I've written.
You know, I haven't read that yet, Jeff. What's that about?
So clever. You know, and it's also disquieting. It's really worth reading.
I thank you. I that description is something that I would definitely. I meant it to be disquieting, and I'm proud that you found it to be so. I
can't even read your Hell books.
Huh?
I can't even read your Hades books.
Why?
Because they're so disquieting to me.
Oh.
Seriously. You know, I just think there's something about them. I mean, I love all your other stuff, but those I'm just like, I can't even take it.
That's beyond disquieting, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe it's disgusting.
No, I wouldn't use that word. But no, I'm sure for anyone else they wouldn't have the same issues I have, but they're very disquieting. Hey, Scott, can you hear us okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
good.
sorry I vanished. It's my haunted computer.
Right now it looks like you're in the witness protection program, buddy.
Yeah, with a distorted voice.
Yeah, that's okay. Don't touch anything. So I want you to elaborate on these rituals, because Jeff, that you had to do when you were a kid, you would like, he said you'd watch like a certain movie, you'd read certain books. Can you talk about that a little bit? Every year for Halloween, I mean.
Sure. rituals. Like there's some that I still do. Like this, I always have to read Jeffrey's story, The Yellow House. There's the story Halloween Girl that I always mention when I'm on here.
Yeah.
From a Twilight Zone magazine. I discovered that. And there's like things on radio that I'll listen to, and old-time radio shows, certain ones that are like The House in Cypress Canyon
Oh yeah.
with Robert Taylor and Ida Lupino. No, not Ida Lupino, but Robert Taylor. I have to hear that every year.
I heard
Yeah,
that.
have you heard that, Matt? The House in Cypress Canyon. It's an old-time radio show, suspense.
No, what I'm trying to do is figure out. I'm sometimes not very savvy. I want to be able to put them on CD so I can listen to them in the car. I have a hard time just listening to them on the computer.
That's actually pretty easy to do, run them to CD. But the House in Cypress Canyon, get your kid to help you with that. He probably knows what to do. The House in Cypress Canyon is probably one of the scariest and best done of the horror old-time radio shows, you know, from the 40s and 50s. Wouldn't you guys say?
That's my favorite. Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
So you listen to that one every year still, Scott?
Pretty much, yeah. Yep. I haven't this year yet, but that is my favorite, and that and the War of the Worlds. I like to listen to those every year if I can.
Yeah.
Another one I like to listen to is Orson Welles did Donovan's Brain for suspense. It was a two-part, and that's kind of a Halloween ritual for me, is listening to that one.
Tell the audience, Scott, about the Yellow House.
The Yellow House. I always forget the magazine it first appeared in. What was that, Jeffrey?
After Hours. It was a small
Right.
magazine.
And it had a cool illustration.
After Hours?
Yeah.
I saw that movie.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a Martin Scorsese movie. That was a good movie.
Augie, was it Wiederman or something? Did the yellow for that?
No, it was another artist. I can't remember his name now. He did a really good job with it, though.
Yeah. But it's a real atmospheric Halloween story. It's got a classic feel to it. It's I don't want to give too much away, but it's got the seasonal ambiance and masks. It's got the sort of childhood fascination with every town has a haunted house sort of place, and it just uses these elements and very clever plotting and effective storytelling, and it's again the way it evokes the season is beautifully done, and it really appeals to my Halloween aesthetic, I guess.
Thank you.
Yeah. You guys are lucky, all three of you, living up north this time of year, because you definitely do not get that same feeling. You know, as you guys know, I'm from Iowa, moved down here to Texas 4 years ago, and you do not get that same feeling at Halloween that you do up north, because for one thing, it's not nearly as cold yet. It's still warm. You know, so it doesn't really. Maybe if you grew up in Texas, it feels like Halloween to you. But if you grew up in Iowa or Illinois or, you know, New England, it definitely doesn't. So this time of year in Iowa,
I lived in San Antonio for several years, and we were in Mississippi. We were in the South for a long time when I was in the Air Force. And here, there's a bike trail right by our house that I like to go on. And over the last 6 weeks, the leaves have turned color, went through their fiery stage, yellow, and now they're brown and falling onto the trail. And you get the smell of leaves as you ride by, and the trees are getting more bare, and the air is just turning colder. And it made me think of the movie Something Wicked This Way Comes.
Oh, that's a great movie.
The introduction where he says, "When the air smells like smoke."
Mm-hmm.
Me, that's how autumn is supposed to feel, just before Halloween.
Definitely.
Yes. Yeah, and you know, there's like, yeah, there's no color change down here, nothing like that. So I really miss it.
Oh, can I say one more thing?
Yeah, please do.
Told us that we had to go to Lost Maples Park, north of San Antonio, to see the colors change, because they had maple trees, you know, which they didn't really have in San Antonio. They got these little oak things with the tiny little leaves that just kind of die all year long. So one fall, Isabel and I piled the kids in the minivan and drove like an hour and a half, I don't know, to Lost Maples. There was one maple tree about 3 feet high, and it had one leaf on it that was red. And I said, see, kids, the leaves are turning.
Take a picture.
Look at that tarantula.
Oh, man.
Very disappointing.
Wow.
Well, you brought up that movie, Something Wicked This Way Comes. You know, they did a really good job adapting that from the book, I thought. And the movie, it's one of the few movies that really captures that feel of autumn, you know, to me.
I need to see that. I've never seen that movie.
Me too.
Oh, you haven't? Jeez.
Flick. I loved it. And then Siskel and Ebert reviewed it. That's when they were both big. And Roger Ebert was saying how much he loved it. I was going, yeah, man, yeah, man. And then Siskel says, it stunk. And then that just kind of bummed me out.
What year did
It's
it
a
come
great
out?
movie.
In the 80s.
Really?
I don't remember exactly what year, but it was in the 80s.
How did I ever miss that? I don't know.
That's a classic now. Let's see, Jason Robards, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And
I got the audio drama for
Pam
that.
Grier, the actress, that was her first comeback movie.
Who?
She had been in those blaxploitation flicks in the mid-'70s and kind of vanished. And she came back as this, I forget what the name of her character was, but it was so iconic and scary. She was really good.
Yeah.
I love
tried
that.
to show that movie to my son when he was probably, I don't know, 7 or 8. It was still too scary for him at that point. I'll have to try again now that he's 12. I'm sure I hope he can handle it. Oh, you asked what the kind of stuff we do. Last night, you know, we moved to this loft apartment downtown, which I love it. It's got so many. It's got this. We live basically in this quaint little old downtown. You know, there's like 3 antique shops, a diner, all kinds of stuff. I mean, there's a lot of shops down here. And but anyway, we live in a second floor loft, and we can go out the window onto the roof of the business next door. So last night we went out there after dark and we were telling ghost stories on the roof. It's a flat roof, obviously. So
That sounds awesome.
otherwise, the old man with the cane couldn't handle it. Well, we actually do that pretty often. Logan loves doing that. So we haven't hit the graveyard this year yet, Matt, but we do that. So, all right, I'm gonna read Alex's true life spooky thing here. My wife has done seances many times, and mostly when she invites whatever spirits, in quotes, to come in. It can either be confusing, frustrating, or just boring. However, there is one little girl that kept coming up who claimed to live in our house. She has always been sort of bratty and stubborn about going away. However, the creepiest instance was when she started talking about liking our cat and playing with him. At that point, our cat came up from wherever he was to climb up to her leg. The girl, through my wife, started petting him and saying how soft his fur was, and our cat seemed to be perfectly fine with the whole thing. Normally she doesn't move or act much while channeling whatever she does, but this time I had the eerie realization that if it was this ghost was using my wife's body to borrow physical senses she was normally denied. That's interesting. So, okay, so here's a question. Do you guys believe in the afterlife, the paranormal? Are you ambivalent about it? What do you guys think?
I'm very skeptical about stuff, but it's exciting to me to read ghost stories, but I'm back in my mind I'm always pretty skeptical. But when things happen to you yourself, then it's more thought-provoking. You know, it's harder to dismiss. And I've had some experiences, and some of the most remarkable experiences I had involved my son Colin, who's autistic, and specifically around the time, I can't remember, my son was maybe, maybe 8 years old, and my dad had died the year before. In fact, it was the 1-year anniversary of my dad's death. But at no time during that day did I tell my son, or even in his presence, say this was a year ago since my dad passed away.
Right.
So my son and I were sitting at the computer, and he's to my left. To my right is a doorway to a little bedroom, and it's dark in there. So we're at the computer, and suddenly my son looks into that room, and he goes with a exclamation of recognition. He goes, "Grandpa!"
Oh, wow.
And I looked in the room, and I didn't see anything, but I had chills, because the way he looked in there and said that, it was like he saw his grandpa. And this is the 1-year anniversary my father passed away. So when something like that happens, it's kind of weird, you know?
Yeah.
And there were another time with my son. It was funny, when I was living in that same house, we were walking down the street to go walk uptown. We live very close to town. We were going to probably just go to the store, maybe the library or something. And in my head, I had the song from The Nightmare Before Christmas. This is Halloween. This is Halloween. You know,
Right.
I know I wasn't singing it. I know it was just going on in my head. You know? And we're walking side by side. My son turns to me and he goes, "It's not Halloween." You know? And I know I wasn't saying it. I know I was only playing that song in my head, you know? It was weird.
That is weird.
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily believe, but experiences like that make you think about it a little bit, you're saying?
Definitely, definitely. And there was another one. It's kind of weird. And again, involves my son. I was waiting for him to come home on the bus. The Venetian blinds are down. You can't look into the room and see the front room and see me in the next room and see what I'm looking at in the computer. Right. I hear the bus come up. Now, I was looking at a picture of my wife-to-be, and it was a sexy picture. I had it up on the screen. I was looking at it. So I hear the bus come up. I minimize that window. So I go out to meet my son. I bring him inside. And when he comes into the house, he goes, and he's autistic. He memorizes things, and So he goes, "Put some clothes on, you crazy bitch." I said, "Colin." I said, "Colin, what are you saying? Who are you talking about?" And he said, "Hong." Hong was my fiance's name,
Mm-hmm.
Why would he say that? How did he couldn't have possibly seen that I was looking at a sexy picture of my fiance on this computer. But the minute he comes in the house, he said, "Put some clothes on," It was just, I don't know.
When I hear stories like that, too, I wonder, okay, doesn't even necessarily, okay, maybe there's I don't know everything, so maybe there is a paranormal explanation. Maybe it is paranormal. But also, maybe it isn't. Maybe there's just some scientific explanation that we still don't understand as far as, minds being able to communicate or something along those lines,
Sure.
Scott, what about you? What do you believe about the paranormal? Scott, you there? I think we're losing Scott again. Yeah, because he just froze.
Since astrology, it
Oh,
shouldn't.
there he is.
Hi.
Hey.
Our science, as impressive as it really is very limited in what it knows about reality. In my opinion, the world used to be believed to be flat, but it's not. And astrology, in my mind, it shouldn't work, but to me, I think it absolutely does. And so while my logical mind tells me that ghosts and spirit are sort of, I don't know, hard to believe concepts, I've had too many experiences not to seriously consider that there's things we don't know about reality, and I've had a lot of experiences that you could describe as supernatural or ghostly.
Mm-hmm. What's an example or two of that makes you think that way? What kind of experiences have you had?
Scott, how about the one that you and I both saw at the same time with our sister?
Oh yeah, that was like a doppelganger. Jeffrey and I each witnessed this at the same time. We were kids, and our sister Wendy walked past us through a room, and then a moment later there came another Wendy walking by right behind her.
Oh wow!
And we both saw this.
Yes. And it was, as I recall it, it was like she was in her night dress, like she was made, almost like she was sleepwalking, and like part of her was like trying to catch up with her. It was just, I remember us kind of like looking at each other like, what?
Doppelganger stories are really creepy. I've got a doppelganger story, but I'll wait to tell it because I want to hear more about Scott's experiences. You seem to. What else has convinced you that, or at least have made you think this way?
I lived in a house in Templeton, Massachusetts that was built in 1774 by a wealthy tanner named Benjamin Reed. And it was a beautiful antique house, but it was, I guess it had been written up as being a part of the one of the haunted houses in Worcester County of that area. And we didn't know when we bought it, my wife at the time, and there was a lot of strange stuff there. A journalist who lived there years before told us how he was in one of the rooms doing some restoration work, and he upstairs bedroom, and something pounded on the wall right outside the door, and he said he never went in the place alone again. And when I was there, a door opened right beside me. It was a door that couldn't open unless you lifted an actual latch on it. You'd smell baking bread. You'd smell flowers in the middle of winter. You'd hear footsteps downstairs. I'd hear be so convinced that someone broke in a couple times that I head downstairs with a gun. Twice there was a ghost cat. I would be in my study and hear a cat purring in the room, and while we did have a cat, he wasn't in the room, and one time I was in bed and I felt the cat jump up on the bed and walk in a little circle and settle. And I looked down, and the cat was already fast asleep. And another time I was lying in bed, felt the cat jump on the bed, do its little walk in a circle, get comfy, settle down, and a moment later the actual physical cat walked into the bedroom through the door. So in each of those cases, what I felt, the weight on the bed and moving, wasn't my cat Hammy doing it.
Yeah, that's got to be quite the feeling, especially in the middle of the night. All right, I'm going to read a story from the message board here. If anyone else has got any stories they want to share, put them on the message board, and I'll see if I can get to them before our time runs out. All right, Felix says, when I was little, after trick-or-treating one Halloween, I went with friends to a cemetery down the street. The local urban myth was that there was a crazy gravedigger who used to grab any unlucky person who wandered into the graveyard at night and throw them into an open grave and bury that person alive. Well, that's just wrong.
That's a spooky story.
I don't agree with that. Well, we looked around and saw nothing, and started walking out disappointed until we saw this tall, dark, shadowy figure by a large tombstone. There he is, my friend screamed. All of a sudden, this large black dog jumped out from behind the tombstone and started running toward us, barking loudly and snapping its shiny white teeth. We immediately turned and ran like hell out of there while he while we heard the man yell, "Don't run, don't run. He doesn't bite if you don't act scared of him." I looked around and saw the dog literally snapping at my heel and shouted to my buddies, "We're not going to make it. Jump over those bushes." We jumped and landed on the other side of the cemetery, covered in stickers from the bramble bush, sucking wind hard. The dog was still barking loud on the other side. The man came over and put a leash around its neck. It was no crazy gravedigger, but just some guy walking his dog. I still remember it all these years later. It shows you how your imagination as a child can be so strong it distorts your sense of reality. Yeah, for sure, especially when you're a kid. That's a great story, Felix.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to make it. I remember one time I was like 6, and I saw this figure. It was the middle of the night, sorry. And I'm laying there, I haven't fallen asleep, and so in the hallway I saw this figure walk in the hallway. And I got so scared I couldn't do anything. I put the covers over my head, and I just prayed that I would fall asleep, and I did. I was just convinced somebody was in the house. But I was too petrified to move. You know, I was 6 years old. Well, the next morning I told my parents and my sister about it. And my sister's like, "Yeah, that was me. I went to get the dog, put the dog in bed with me." I was like, well, why didn't I think of that? But, you know, when you're a kid.
Yeah, yep. Kind of extrapolate a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see, what else we got here? Don Lee says, when I was a boy, my great-grandfather told me when he was young and married to my granny, he was walking home from the fields from work one afternoon, and he saw across in the distance his mother-in-law, my granny's mom, walking toward the house. The only problem was his mother-in-law had gone insane years before and was in the madhouse in Little Rock. He arrived home and asked my granny what her mother was doing there, and of course there was no answer. That's interesting. All right, so the doppelganger story I have, I don't know if this is true or not, probably not, but it's still a great story. This guy, he had this job where he was some kind of delivery guy, and his schedule was very, very precise. You know, he'd get out of bed same time every morning. He left for work at exactly the same time every morning. He'd arrive at the same time, and then as he made his deliveries around town, those would always be pretty much down to the minute as well. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So he almost never called in sick, but one day he was really, really sick, and so he calls in sick and he can't go to work that day. Okay, fine. So it's either a ghost or one of my animals. So where was I? He called in he decided that he was going to go out and get some cold medicine. That was it. So he goes out and gets some cold medicine, and he's driving down the street, and as he goes down a particular spot, he thinks, normally on a normal work day I'd be exactly, you know, coming here the opposite way in this exact spot. There's 2 Scott Thomases on the screen, speaking of spooky.
Oh, God. You're doing my doppelganger.
Yeah, I'm telling a doppelganger story. So anyway, as he thinks that, he sees, and by the way, he used his own car for business for the deliveries. So as he thinks that, he sees a car exactly like his coming the opposite way. In other words, the exact same time and place that he would normally be if he hadn't called in sick. And he's like, "Oh, that's weird." And as he gets closer, as they pass each other like this, you know, the guy looks at him, and he looks at the guy, and the guy looks exactly like he does, mirror image of him. So I always thought that was a pretty good story.
Back when Isabel and I first got married, we used to love to go to movies. It was our passion.
Mm-hmm.
We'd go to like 3 movies on a weekend, or like 3 movies even on a Saturday, and we saw all these independent movies. And you know, of course, now if like it isn't by Pixar, we're not even getting it on video or something, but it's like there's a movie that kind of describes what you're talking about called The Double Life of Veronique. I don't know if it's Polish or it's in French or it's French. This woman sees herself living another life and gets convinced that each person has a duplicate living a different life, and she starts to get fascinated by the other life that she isn't living.
Huh. Cool.
I just, that would be maybe this is just an example of that phenomenon.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about doppelgangers, but I do think it's pretty fascinating, and there's something really unsettling about it too.
Sure.
Yeah, speaking of unsettling, when I was younger, I don't think I look like him anymore, but I was always told that I look like Richie Cunningham. So, Ron Howard.
Oh, I used to get that too myself.
Oh, did you?
My mom used to say that to me. You look like Ron Howard.
Yeah, and one more short doppelganger story, Scott. So I was reading the proof to your book a couple of weeks ago. I go to this diner every morning down the street. You know, I eat breakfast and like either read or work or whatever while I'm eating. So I had the proof to the book, and so I showed it to one of the waitresses, you know, because they know what I do and everything, and they think it's like endlessly fascinating. They think I'm this glamorous writer, editor, and can't bring myself to tell them I'm just this poor guy living down the street.
Cultivate it, man. Cultivate it.
Yeah. But anyway, so she wants to know if she can look at the book, and I'm like, yeah, sure, look at it. She goes, oh, that's a nice picture of you on the back. And I'm like, what? They're supposed to put a picture of Scott on the back. So I look at it, and it's Scott. She goes, oh, no, that looks just like you.
It's a man.
Yeah, it's a man, and he's got a beard. He's kind of, you know, my hair was kind of long, so just like Scott in the picture. So, do we lose Scott again? Is he frozen?
I don't know. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think he's frozen.
Yeah.
Well, you're here, and it's just the same, so.
Poor Scott, he's looking forward to this, and his computer keeps messing up for him. Let's see what else we got here. Kenneth Curtis Brown says, I just want to express my thanks for everyone sharing their experiences with the paranormal. My estranged wife had many stories about her childhood. Dolls, shadows, sounds all pervaded her past. Unfortunately, I can't say the same. I've never experienced good or malign that could be considered otherworldly. Sometimes I wonder if the real thing to be afraid of in the dark is the nothingness that Lovecraft mentioned. Again, thanks all for sharing so close to Halloween. You know what that makes me think of is that passage in the Sea of Ash where the Albert Kahn is talking about growing up, and he has these 3 sisters, and he would like fix their dolls and everything. I don't know how long it's been since you read it, Jeff, but
quite a
he
while.
said that sorry?
Oh, quite a while since I've read it.
Oh, okay. Well, one of the dolls had human hair. This is like, you know, late 1800s, I guess, 1900 or so. And I guess that was a thing back then. He said it was always found facing east when it rained. Remember that passage? If Scott comes back, I want to ask him about that. He kind of comes up with these side things that have really nothing to do with the story itself, but add so much character to the story, you know?
Little teasing hints of that could easily go off on their own into their own stories. Yeah, I love things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you wonder what the hell's that all about? And it's just, he kind of says it in passing, you know, which I think the message is there's more. The message of the whole book is there's more to the world than you think there is, you know, which those little side stories illustrate a little bit. So, but I wonder if that was something he heard or if he just came up with it. You know, us writers, we throw things in books that we've heard from other people sometimes, you know.
Sure. He also has imagination to spare. It just overflows, you know, so it's kind of pouring off in every direction.
Yeah. He's an amazing writer. Both of you guys are.
Such an amazing imagination.
While I'm on the subject, The Sea of Flesh, you got that reprinted as well, right?
Yeah, I put it into my collection, Worship the Night, that came out last year.
Okay. Is that available on Amazon?
Yep.
Or
Dark Renaissance books, right?
Yes, it's from Dark Renaissance Books. It's still not in ebook form. It's it's in hardcover and paperback. I can't remember if any of the hardcovers are still available, but definitely paperback is available.
it's called Worship the Night?
Worship the Night.
Worship the Night. Okay. Let's see what else we got here.
Definitely paperbacks are available and they're not expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna have to pick one up
Well,
though.
it's a bargain.
It's a beautifully illustrated book. It was illustrated by Erin Wells, and she's illustrated a couple of Scott's books, and she's really remarkable.
Speaking of that, supernatural noir, Matt, you'll be interested in this. Ellen Datlow just posted on her Facebook page that, well, you're not in the Kindle, but for anybody it's $2.51 right now.
Oh, I have a copy of that. It's just I used to read so much, and I still buy like I actually read these books.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Like the older my kids have gotten, the busier they have gotten. The past 18 months with work and their activities, I have had less time than I've ever had.
How old are your kids now?
15 and 16.
Yeah, well, give yourself like 3 more years, and they'll be in college, and you'll have this free time.
Right, and I'll be decrepit.
Huh?
I'll be decrepit, and they'll be in college.
You'll be depressed, but you'll fill this hole in your life with all these the 3 libraries of books that you have. See, what I have to do, because I don't have quite as much capital, is I join Kindle Unlimited. It's $9.99 a month, and you can get all these Kindle books for free from Amazon. It's a pretty cool program. So, but anyway, I know you're into noir and obviously supernatural. So for anybody that is, Supernatural Noir, edited by Ellen Datlow, is $2.51 right now on Kindle. I don't know how much it is on paperback, but it's like I always say: if the book says edited by Ellen Datlow on it, you just buy it. Don't look at the title or anything else. Just buy the book. So it's gonna be good. So all right, let's what else we got here. I guess got a little bit longer to get in here, and I won't keep you guys too long. Kim again says there was this one time I accidentally read a coworker's mind. All right, Kim, that's the last time you're playing Call of Cthulhu with us. We were having a conversation at work, and he was talking about his pet guinea pig, and he was trying to get me to guess what it ate. I got an image in my mind of a little brown and white guinea pig chewing on the carpeting, pulling it up in strings, and on a whim I said, "Carpet?" He stared at me stunned for a few seconds and then asked me how I knew. I laughed and said I didn't. He said, "No, seriously, how did you know?" Apparently his little brown and white guinea pig has that particular habit. Which, I want to ask you this, Matt, because you've been married a long time too. Do you find you and your wife, you haven't texted each other all day, for example, and all of a sudden you'll call or text each other at exactly the same time? That kind of thing ever happen?
Yeah, of course it happens. But part of that is she understands my schedule. You know what I mean? Like it's
yeah, but it keeps happening to me, and I don't have a schedule per se. You know, I'm not ready to assign anything supernatural to it. Don't get me wrong, but it kind of it's weird. It seems to be happening more and more the longer we're married. Like we tune to the same radio station or something.
I've been something of a bad influence on her.
Oh, I have no doubt.
Because I'm very much like, shut your yap and get to the point. You know, that's the way that I have to be at work. You know, it's like.
Do you mind if I take notes on this?
Sure. Well, it's like people go on and on tangential topics, and I have to be extremely efficient in what I do.
Yeah.
So you start using an economy of language, and you say things once, and you get used to compact information. So then you go to a party, and someone's nattering on, and it's like, I'm thinking to myself, I'm nodding and smiling and thinking to myself, shut the fuck up. And I find Isabel is sort of like, not the same as me, but she's sort of adopted this sort of thing. So like sometimes she'll go out with the girls and they'll just be going on about something, and she finds herself thinking, I just sort of wish they'd get to the point. And I think we end up sharing quite a lot of thoughts at parties or get-togethers in that respect.
Yeah, no, Danielle's quite the opposite of me in that respect. I think talking is the point, not getting to the point. You know, we're at a party and it's time to leave. If she says it's time to leave, you know, and she grabs her purse, then I know it's time to leave in 30 minutes because she's going to talk to everybody on the way out the door.
Okay, well, not that we're talking about gender politics here, but I've heard a description like a woman's mind is sort of like a ball of yarn, where every strand is connected to every other strand. So your comment about what she did for dinner has something to do with her sister coming over 2 weeks ago and an argument that the two of you might have had the other day and how she's feeling right now. Okay, just for example, whereas a man's mind is like a lot of little separate boxes. Each one is compartmentalized. When you have a car trouble, it's in the car trouble box. You deal with it, and it's not connected to anything else. And the thing that women really don't get is that the biggest box of all is the nothing box, where there's no thought in it or anything, and you're just sitting there, and the nothing box is open, and you aren't thinking of anything. You're just kind of breathing. Like that's why you can watch mindless TV or whatever, and so it's just a different way. It's not that it's wrong or right. It's just different.
Yeah.
And so Isabel very much is about all these connections where I'm not.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's not one way is better than the other. It's just they're different. All right, so I've got from Susan on the message board, Jeff. Both brothers are amazing. I'd love to hear more of their inspirations and who do they read.
Hi, Susan. I know who this is. Who my inspirations? Who do I read? Well, you know, the obvious favorites would be like Lovecraft but sometimes my favorites are, and my biggest sources of inspiration are not people that you would think of because they're not necessarily associated with the fantastical genres. You know, people like Thomas Hardy, Yukio Mishima, and so I try to have eclectic taste in reading, you know, and so my inspirations come from all over the place. Another favorite writer of mine is Martin Cruz Smith, who writes about the Russian police investigator Arkady.
Gorky Park. Arkady Renko.
Yeah, Arkady Renko. And I love that whole series. And you know, Nabokov, and so you know, because I don't only want to read horror. It's not. It's I think reading all kinds of fiction, I think, enhances my writing. It gives me a broader, more colors on the palette, you know, to work with. You know, but not just that. It's just I would be bored if I was only reading one kind of thing. If I was only reading horror, if I was only reading Lovecraftian horror, or only science fiction or whatever. So my inspirations come from all over the place, and so I'm reading one. You know, I read a lot of my contemporaries too, and I have a lot of friends who are great writers. You know, I've cultivated these friendships because I'm in admiration of these people. So probably the bulk of what I read these days is fellow writers, people I know, you know, people I'm privileged to know.
Good. I'm glad. Well, if Scott makes it all the way back in, we can ask him. There he is. Right. Oh wow, and there's light where he is too. Hey, Scott. You there?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
I can. It was breaking up a little. Sorry, my computer twice has gone all blue screen with white letters on it, something about device drivers and hardware, so now I'm on a different machine for the moment.
Oh,
all right.
Sorry about that.
I got a question for you before I lose you then. if you can still hear me. I just read this to Jeff, but Susan on the message board says, both brothers are amazing. I'd love to hear more of their inspirations, and who do they read? Could you hear me? I'll take that as a no.
I'm not hearing you, Mike.
You're not hearing me? Can you hear it?
I heard Susan on the message board wants to hear more about our inspirations.
Yeah, and who do you read? What authors do you read?
For moments. Inspirations as it. M.R. James. The Lovecraft. Henry James. Non-horror writers. Dylan Thomas. I guess Thomas Hardy to some degree. Jeffrey, of course.
Oh, he just froze again. Oh, there he is. Yeah, I don't think your new computer's too much better than the last. That's too bad.
I'm sorry, maybe, Scott, I know this would be a pain in the butt.
I'm only hearing little few words here.
We've got a sidebar for conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Potentially type in what you're saying and we could read it, or you could maybe go to the webzine site and list some of the authors that you like. That would be really nice. Because we're all kind of interested in where, you know, I know it's your own imagination, but influences are always interesting, considering how rich your stories are.
Yeah, they really are.
Scott also draws a lot of his inspiration from his research, because he's often writing stories based in the 19th century, the 18th century, in either Britain or New England. He does a great deal of research. He's very knowledgeable about those time periods. And so a lot of his inspiration comes from his nonfiction research, I'm sure.
Yes, that's very true.
Yeah, you know, that's a talent in itself, being able to be a good researcher. Yeah. Not something I'm good at.
That's right, to do research and then to incorporate it, and not to make it so overwhelming that it's like, here's the info dump. You know, it's got to enhance the story. It's got to serve the story. It can't just exist for it. It can't be showy. It can't be out of balance. So he's very
obsessive about it. I over-research it, and to me it's also my way of tuning in to the period. But clothing, implements, what rooms look like, architecture, the towns, and what the society was like in the past, and I go crazy and obsessed trying to make it accurate, and dialogue. It's really painstaking, and I find I can write a contemporary piece quicker because there's less constraint of trying to conform it to the limitations of keeping with a period and the accuracy of that period. So it's, well, I love it. It is challenging in ways.
If you can still hear me, Scott, I've got a quick question for you.
Mm-hmm.
I said this when you were out of the room, but in the Sea of Ash, you talk. There's this one passage where you're talking about Albert Pond and how he would fix his sister's dolls.
I was able to hear you on the PC in the other room, the laptop.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the doll.
That doll is creepy. Yeah, that details like that, and in this story where I'm trying to create a New England that just under the surface is just intriguingly textured with oddities and creepy things and some beautiful things, but I wanted there to be these little details that didn't necessarily pertain to the storyline,
right,
but that evoked the ethereal or it gave the impression that there are these mysteries all around that intrigue the three main characters. And so I throw in these weird little bits like that just to kind of make the real world a little off balance, as it was for the fellows in the story.
Yeah, there's more to the universe than what it seems that there is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think this quote that I put on the back of the book really sums up the book quite a bit. Never had the universe felt so vast, and I so small within it. I had, through circumstance, been made aware of something, but of what? Something either too horrible or too beautiful for humans to know. So I thought, if somebody doesn't read anything except that quote in regards to what is this book about, I think that'll grab them right there. It really sums up the book in a way. So
I like that you used that. It does sort of summon the gist of the book.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry you had so much computer trouble, but I really appreciate you being on the show again, Scott, and
my pleasure.
Glad to have you guys this year, Matt and Jeff.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Sure. I hope everyone has a really fun Halloween. I'm going to have a good Halloween. I hope you all do too.
You too.
Yeah, same here. And if Scott, if you can get your computer, I'd be happy to do some private tests with you. But if you can get the computer issues figured out, I'd love to have you on a Sunday show sometime in the next couple of months and ask you more about your inspirations and your writing and so forth. So, because I think the viewers are interested, and get your brother on here again too, obviously. So, but his computer's not having as much problems. But all right, thanks guys. Thanks for being on the Halloween show this year.
Thank you for having us, Matt.
Hey, have a good night.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Thanks everybody for watching.
Happy